Three, two, one, punch it.
Could you jump to light speed in that tin can? Go back in time in a DeLorean? Will it crash or take to the sky? Tell me, smart guy, does it fly?
Welcome to Does It Fly, the podcast that puts your favorite sci-fi properties, inventions, and conceits to the test. I'm your mad scientist, Hakeem Oluseyi.
And I'm your pop culture expert, Tamara Krinsky. Time to dive into today's topic and see, does it fly?
This episode of Does It Fly is presented by ScreenUK. Yo, welcome back. Welcome back, friends. Tamara, how you doing? How you been? What you been up to?
I'm good. I've been traveling. I just got back from Toronto, and you've been traveling too, right?
Yeah, I've been traveling too. Today I'm repping my NASA satellite shirt, the IMAP satellite, mapping the heliosphere and the interstellar medium nearby. So yeah, it's a reason I'm wearing a space shirt today.
Why are you wearing a space shirt today, Dr. Oluseyi?
Maybe it's the same reason you're wearing your kick-ass woman outfit today.
There is something very inspiring about the lead character in the movie series we're going to be talking about. We're talking about Alien.
It's the alien. So who is the lead character? Is it Ripley or the alien?
Oh, it's Ripley. Come on.
It's Ripley.
Although I'm sure that the alien would disagree with that. But yes, we're going to be talking about Alien. We're going to be talking about the Aliens franchise. We're talking, of course, about the iconic character, Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver.
Yes.
And we are going to be talking about the topic of, can an alien species incubate inside a human being? And how are we going to do this, Hakeem? Remind everyone of our little format here.
All right. So our format is, first, I discuss the science. Can it happen today? Can it happen tomorrow? Then Tamara discusses the story, the storyline. Is it consistent within the franchise? Does it make sense within the franchise? How's the writing? But then, even if it doesn't fly science-wise, even if the story doesn't fly, we have a third category where we may still get some airtime. And that is the feels, the vibe. Is it so good? Is it so entertaining? Does it stimulate me so much that I don't care? The science can suck. The writing can be horrible. The actors can be horrible. Okay, maybe in that case, it doesn't fly altogether. But the third one, how do you describe the third one? Because that is the sort of like
I think
subjective one.
I think that you and I are looking at it from sort of these almost what I'd call two technical perspectives from our areas of expertise, right? Like you're taking on the science, I'm taking on the narrative piece of it, and we're breaking it down a little bit. We're looking at the different elements. And then at the end of the day, though, you're left with the feeling like, is what you're watching on screen just so cool that you don't care? You're not worried about the logic of it. You're just having a good time in that movie theater or wherever you may be streaming your things. So
I just got inspired. This episode of Does It Fly is presented by ScreenUK. ScreenUK is a free discovery platform celebrating the very best of UK-produced film, television, animation, and gaming, and sharing it with audiences around the world. ScreenUK is the go-to place to discover your next favorite movie, show, or game, and features tons of exclusive behind-the-scenes interviews and all the info you need to find out how and where to watch or play your newest obsessions wherever you are in the world. Make ScreenUK.org your next stop. Look, Alien goes all the way back, like how many decades? Like, what are we talking?
1979. 1979. The
1979.
first Alien singular came out in 1979.
Aliens, yeah.
Yep. It was directed by Ridley Scott. And now, of course, almost everyone knows who Ridley Scott is if you're into movies or if you're into sci-fi and genre films. But back then, this was he was a newer person.
That was innovative.
Yeah.
That was an innovative movie. I can't wait to get to your section of the discussion because I want to talk about the story. But listen, in terms of the science, we're going to focus on the science today. We're going to talk about, like I say, biology has that component that physics and astrophysics, my fields, don't have. Nasty. All right.
And there's a lot of nasty in this.
The nasty is alien reproduction.
Right. And so I want to be clear, too, just for everybody listening, a couple of things. One, we are going to be talking about what happens in these movies. So if you have not seen them and you do not want them spoiled, hit pause, go watch them right now. And there's a lot to watch because there are many movies, there's comic books, there's books, there's a whole aliens world. And
Yeah.
then come back, unhit pause, and continue on with our wonderful podcast. So that's
Yeah.
our spoiler announcement. The other thing I want to do is kind of just set boundaries. Like with all big franchises that we talk about, we pick one thing to kind of focus on for each episode. And like we said, this one is going to be, can a species incubate inside of a human being? So we're going to look at sort of the main trilogy that kind of kicked it off, which is Aliens, which was directed by James Cameron in 1986, and Aliens 3, which was the 1992 movie with David Fincher. We may mention briefly a couple of the others, but we're not going to get into questions of two of the prequels, which were Prometheus and Covenant. We're not going to get into those. Those bring up other kinds of questions about AI and origins of humanity, origins of the alien. That might be a topic for another show.
Yeah, black goo. These aliens, man, they are not out of nowhere, right? They are inspired,
Mm-hmm.
and they're inspiring.
Let me set up the first Alien movie, because again, there may be people, it is from 1979, so it is entirely
Yes.
possible that there are folks listening or watching who may not be as familiar. So basically, it takes place in the far, far future. You've got the crew of a ship called the Nostromo, which is a commercial mining spaceship, and they respond to a distress signal that's coming from a barren ship, from a moon. And so they discover a very freaky situation where there's a chamber containing all of these eggs. And ultimately, one of the crew members, played by John Hurt, tries to touch one of the eggs, and he's seemingly attacked by an alien creature. They come back to the ship, and then we kind of go from there. And that's when we get into the life cycle of this. So I'm going to kick it to you for the science of outlining what the life cycle is, and then telling me whether you think that flies or not.
Yeah. You know what I love about Alien and its reproduction is that before I describe what it is the question is, how do you want to reproduce? What do you want to be your sort of like reproductive ability? And
there are so many answers to that question, which I don't think you're going to make it past the censors.
See, there I go, being not even seeing the full unintended consequences. Not even.
How do you want to reproduce? What abilities would you like to have?
Yeah, what abilities do you like that? I mean, the ultimate ability is adaptability.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I think that if you look at the realm of life, the best things at adaptability are the microscopic organisms, right? When we talk about, global climate change and, we're having loss of biodiversity. The bacteria are not suffering from lack of biodiversity, right? Climate change isn't impacting them like it's impacting us. And so if you look at it, whether you're talking about archaea, whether you're talking about bacteria, whether you're talking about viruses, they have
Wait, hold on, teacher, I have a question. What are archaea?
Oh, archaea are other types of prokaryotes. And so prokaryotes are, we divide life into prokaryotes and eukaryotes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So prokaryotes are the simplest. They're basically bags with, liquids and stuff in them. And a bag with other bags. And prokaryotes have organelles. And they're thought to have been derived from eukaryotes combining, right? So one model has that you have a bacterial mitochondria that goes inside of an archaeal cell, and that becomes, and maybe there's another model that says that, viruses are encased genetic material, RNA or DNA, which is exactly what our cell's nucleus is. So maybe the nucleus is derived from a cell that ended up inside of the first early eukaryote, something along those lines, right? So the eukaryotes, like us, that have these complex cells with organelles, like plants, they have, the stuff that creates energy inside of them. They have, ribosomes and all these other parts that do little jobs, right? They're more complex. But when you're small, you can take material inside yourself and put material outside yourself incredibly rapidly. So one key to adaptability is speed, right? You can adapt your genetic code. Now, when you look at the transfer of genetic code and adaptability as regards to genetic code, for us big animals, we typically think of parent to offspring transfer of DNA, right? And that's somewhat of a slower mode of genetic change. You know, you could have mutations, which are where it's not done perfectly, and then you just have the fact that you're mixing up is sexual reproduction. So you got more ingredients coming in. But these things can do horizontal gene transfer. So you can bump up against your buddy and share some of your genes. And those types of viruses, right? What are they called? There's a name for them where they insert their genetic code into our cells. It becomes a part of our genetic code, right? So having that ability, these aliens in the movie Alien, they do that. They have this type of adaptability in their reproduction process. And another thing you want to do to ensure survival is to have the ability to go in some sort of stasis state, whether it's your spore or whether it's you as an individual. So aliens do all of that. These things are made to survive. They're better than roaches.
Yeah. And I was actually, it's funny that you brought that up because I was going to ask you, you often hear like sort of the old adage, like, well, roaches are going to be the only ones who survive a nuclear war. So you're talking about adaptability. Is that true?
No, even though roaches have shown some extra resilience where it involves radiation, dealing with radiation as a large animal, microscopic organisms are they're gonna be around much longer than roaches. Okay, so now let's look at the alien life cycle.
Yeah.
All right. So the alien life cycle in part mimics parasitoid animals here on Earth, like parasitic wasps that lay their eggs and caterpillars, right? But it's different. And also, if you look at insects on Earth, there's this metamorphosis process where you go from egg to larva to pupa to full-blown adult. So the aliens incorporate some of that. So here's what happens. You start with the eggs that are laid by a queen, just like in ants and wasps. And by the way, I never really studied biology because, it got that nasty thing in it. But I learned only late in life that ants are wasps.
Wait, what?
Yeah, ants are wasps that evolved to be flightless.
What happened to the stinger?
They still have it. You ain't had no red ants on you, have you? I just got bitten yesterday by red ants.
So the queen lays the eggs.
Queen lays the eggs. So you would assume that a queen who's laying eggs has likely mated with the male at some point. Right? And now she's, right? They have a sexual transfer. So now you lay the eggs. The eggs have the ability to remain dormant. Because what comes out of the egg is something that behaves like a parasitoid, like the parasitic wasp. It is something that is looking for a host in which to impregnate, all right? And that host can be any animal. It can be a human, it can be a dog, it could be a horse, whatever, you name it, right? Something small as a cat, something big as an elephant, African elephant.
Oh, don't do the cat.
Oh, is there some old movie where the little cat runs up with a human face or a little dog? Remember that at the end of the movie?
I don't know. I'm going to have to check that one out.
Yeah, that was some old movie, like from the 70s or something.
For those of you who are watching, let us know in the comments, okay?
So now what happens is, typically in the metamorphosis cycle of the insects, it goes egg larva. But for the alien, it doesn't go egg larva. There's this intermediate stage before the larval stage. And that's this thing that comes out that's called a face hugger. All right. It has these finger-like appendages, 8 of them, I think, and a tail that wraps around the neck of whoever's going to impregnate. It goes on the face. An ovipositor, which is the long thing that delivers eggs like an insect, goes into the mouth. I don't know if it goes into the esophagus or the trachea or burrows its own tunnel. But what it does is it impregnates the human with a larva.
Yeah.
And so how that larva gets there is the question. Because what happens is there is a horizontal gene transfer between the larva, now embryo, and the human or the host, whatever that host may be,
whatever the host
whether
is.
it's a dog or an elephant or whatever. And so the Xenomorph, which is the name of the alien that comes out, will now have characteristics of the host. That way, it's already adapted to the planet it's on because the host is adapted to the planet it's on. Right? That is brilliant, right? That is brilliant alien design. And now the embryo larva is called a chest buster. Because that's how it exits the host. It bursts out of the chest violently, destroying the host, and then it runs away to hide so that it can now rapidly molt and grow. And so it'll grow from a little sausage up to like a 2 meter, 7 foot being in a matter of hours.
Yeah.
So that's how they go from egg to now Xenomorph post-host.
Post-haste, if one is around. What do you think of the science? What do you think? I mean, does that feel like something that could happen? Or that could be, or that there could be a species that, that follows that pattern? Do you feel like there's enough science injected in there that follows the logic of what we know so far that could be extrapolated out to realistically create this terrifying?
Well,
honestly, just listening to you describe it is terrifying, much less watching it.
It is. It really, really is.
Yeah.
If such a creature exists, I mean, that's a brilliant, that's what nature would do. Because if you think about the fact that all stars are going to die and their planets are going to have issues. And so if you can't build your own stars, then you have to leave and go to another star system. So ultimately, the universe will select for, Darwinian evolution is going to select for species that can leave their planet and quickly adapt to their new home, like these aliens, or species that are going to be able to build their own stars, right? So it's one way or the other.
Feels like the biological answer as opposed to the building your own star might be a little more...
That would require interstellar travel. That's,
right.
Build your own star, interstellar travel. So the thing that's weird in this, everything else is well grounded in what we see in nature already on Earth. But this other step, instead of egg, larva, pupa, adult, you have, or final state, you have egg, face hugger, chest burster, adult. And the thing is that the chest burster is typically the second thing. So it's almost like you give birth to an intermediate form out of the egg that does it impregnate that thing, that person, to create the larva, the chest burster, and die? Does it molt, like that's a form of it, and then the other form of it, it's still the same thing and it goes in there? But that whole face hugger part, that's the weird part.
I actually have to agree with you. If I think that there's so much about the life cycle that we follow that makes sense, but that was actually a little bit of a bump for me. Like, why do these embryos need to implant the way that they do?
Yeah. I can see that happening, right? I mean, it does make sense in some way, but you know what it reminds me of that's so gross? Are you familiar with these arthropods that eat a fish's tongue and then replaces it and lives there as its tongue?
No, I am not.
Yeah, they attach themselves to the base of the tongue they just ate, and live life. So they eat with the fish, right? So the fish is catching the food, they're eating, and the fish is like, my tongue feel weird. So
that is disgusting.
It is disgusting. The photograph is disgusting. Yeah, you know how there's that.
Count on you to bring some of the nasty.
So I'm gonna say something I don't often say, Tamara.
Uh-oh.
And I'm not that guy who's harsh on sci-fi. Everything got to make sense. You can't have an explosion in space. You wouldn't hear anything. I'm like, yeah, it's a movie. It's for entertainment. I get it, right?
Yeah. No,
but
the show is all about the love for
the love, right?
Yeah.
And it's rare. I don't know the statistics yet, but I just feel like I say it doesn't fly quite often. This one flies.
do very often, with a lot of love, say that the science maybe doesn't quite work.
Doesn't quite work. But this one, it works for me. That intermediate phase, I think, is really brilliant because what that introduces is a mechanism for horizontal gene transfer. And
Yeah.
that allows that rapid evolution that you need, right? So I am, and the fact that the creature can spit acid, the facehugger can spit acid of all things. That's why I can't wait to get to the story part, man, because the behavior of these things and certain parts of their anatomy, I'm just like, oh, that is so brilliant. I love it. The science of alien flies. I want a pet xenomorph.
Did you watch these movies? Did you watch these movies?
I can tame it.
Oh, the hubris. The hubris. Clearly you're a company man. All right. So that brings us to the story piece of the Aliens franchise. And when we talk about the reproductive elements of it,
Ooh.
does the story fly? So let's start off, and you gave us a little preview of this, but let's start off with the design because this is one of the most terrifying creatures, I will say, in all of sci-fi and what we've seen on screen. And that begins with H.R. Giger and special effects artist, special effects person, Ron Cobb. The work that the two of them did together to create the Xenomorph for Alien is iconic. It's terrifying, and it has inspired so much else in this genre. So, yeah, you've got something on screen that scares the bejesus out of you. And also, so something to know too is that in this first movie, in Alien, it was done with practical effects, not CGI. For those who may not be familiar, H.R. Giger is he's an artist, and his work is really it's biomechanical, right? It's looking at combining these mechanical forms with humanoid forms, and it's pretty freaky. It's dark. It usually has sexual overtones. It's reptilian, it's insectoid. I mean, it's pretty scary. And the actual design for the fully grown xenomorph is pulled directly from Giger's. I'm going to say this wrong because I rarely hear people say it out loud, but Necronom 4. So go Google that. You can look it up and be like, oh yeah, I see it. For the first Alien, they actually had an actor inside of a suit. They were specifically looking for somebody very tall and very
With 8
slender.
legs.
Yep. And they, well, he did, yeah. And so they found a Nigerian actor named Balaji Badejo. They actually found him in a bar one night, and they were like, "Hey, you want to come audition?" for
Wait
this
a
movie?"
minute.
Yeah, I'm serious.
The alien is a Nigerian guy?
The alien in the first movie is a Nigerian guy.
Listen, because my last name is Oluseyi, I get, which is a Yoruba Nigerian last name, even though my family's been here 6 generations, right? My mom's family immigrated from Yoruba land back in the day. I'm written to all the time by Nigerian people. And there's a lot of Nigerian pride. And I have never heard any person mention this before.
Well, now you've got something new to tell them. So yeah, so that was what happened. And so, he obviously had this incredible quality of movement, and it was pretty terrifying. The second film Aliens, which was directed by James Cameron, as we mentioned, that's like a bit later in 1986. That was much more of an action film, right? Like if you look at the first Alien really as sci-fi horror, James Cameron really pushed it into sci-fi horror action, and that used the aliens differently, right? Like there were more actors in suits. You didn't see as much of them, and the rest were all done with a combination of puppetry and CGI.
Puppetry?
Yeah.
Wow. So there were big giant alien puppets on set?
Right. So let's talk about the Queen. So we meet the Queen. You mentioned our Queen who lays the eggs. So we first meet the Queen in Aliens, and the Queen was designed by James Cameron and Stan Winston, who people who are sci-fi aficionados and fantasy aficionados may know from like Jurassic Park, dinosaurs, all of that. So master craftsmen. So they came up with the Queen's Queen design. And the original appearance, it was 14 feet tall. It took 16 puppeteers to operate, 2 of which were inside.
Wow.
Right. And so one of the I mean, I have to say this, like, and again, going back to 86, like, we did not have, they did not have the post-production tools that we have today. I mean, now you throw AI on, you throw something into AI and
Yeah.
you're like, get rid of all the things in the background and it's gone.
Right.
It did not work that way then. So, like, you think about the mastery of somebody like a James Cameron who had
Mhm.
this crazy puppet with wires and people, and you never see that in the film.
Is that puppet now in the Smithsonian?
I don't know, but it should be.
It should be,
It
right?
should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a
Dubai.
very good question. The other thing is we kind of meet different pieces or learn different pieces of the alien lore throughout, right? Like we're
Yeah.
introduced in Aliens and then the designs kind of change a little bit over
Yeah.
time, right? So like something that we learn in Aliens 3, so there's a big debate as to whether the face hugger implants in a dog or an ox.
Oh yeah.
There's a big
Yes, yes.
debate.
That runner guy.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
a lot of people will call it the runner alien. Some people
Yeah.
call it the ox alien or the dog alien. But what is clear is that, it's running around on all fours
It's
as
a
opposed,
quadruped.
yeah, as it's not bipedal. So so we do know that's where we see some of this DNA transfer taking place. And so that's, again, another piece of this that we learn, right? And again, like you've got this insane design that is just really scary. Um,
So let me ask you a question about the alien when you first saw it. Before you saw the queen, just the adult alien. What did you think of? Did you think it was a vertebrate? Do you think it had an exoskeleton, an internal skeleton? Because as for some reason in my mind, I both thought exoskeleton and reptile. And then when I saw the queen, I saw arthropod, right? All these segmented legs. So I'm like, what is it?
I mean, when I first saw it, I didn't think at all. I was like, I'm gonna run.
Right. Yeah. And that is the thing about this alien that I loved about the writing is how creepy and surprising it was. So all the surprises is what get me. So I always figure out the plot, what's going to happen, and if it surprises me, oh, I just love you movie, right? The double mouth, didn't see that coming.
No. Okay, the double mouth is just insane. I mean,
Right.
I'm glad you didn't see, and with the queen, it's a jaw that can actually rotate.
Oh, I don't remember that part. Because
Mhm.
the thing is, too, is I think that's something that's done now a lot with different monsters that come out. But back
Mhm.
then, it was never seen anything like that before.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
So they had to be really innovative with that.
Yeah.
The musculature of the jaws was crafted with shredded condoms to hide the
What?
mechanisms that move the mouth and the
Wow.
tongue and the lips. Prop masters are some of the most inventive people out there. They find uses for all kinds of objects in all different ways.
Well,
So
listen, you're
kudos
going
to
to
prop
use what
masters.
you have on hand. You're not going to be like, oh,
Mhm.
let's build this out of something that we're not going to be able to obtain.
Well, okay, so you were talking about the eggs before, speaking of things to obtain and not obtain, those
Yeah.
eggs were stuffed with sheep intestines and then lined with the lining around a cow's stomach.
Were they cooked or uncooked? Because, once they're cooked and they're in the form of chitlins, they're kind of delicious. So you're saying that these aliens are born in a bucket of chitlins?
I'm saying these aliens are born in a bucket of chitlins.
Those prop masters, I tell you, they just happen to have some intestines lying around.
They got all kinds of stuff.
Don't go to lunch with these guys and women. These humans.
These humans.
Can we end this episode so I can go eat? All right.
Well, all right. See, I mean, for me,
Yes.
when I think about ending the episode is when I am terrified because
Mm.
getting back to story, they do such a good job of setting up an incredibly frightening situation. There is incredible use of sound, of music. Obviously, we've talked about the creature design and it's amazing, but it's also sort of these larger themes, right? Like, I mean, Ridley Scott has talked about the fact that when he initially conceived this, it was about like I watched this movie and to me this is a movie about having my body invaded This
Yeah,
is a
like when
movie about being impregnated by somebody I do not want to be impregnated by. And, you know, I'm not going to get like all political here, but I will say, like, in the environment in this country right now, it is a movie about what resonates with me is not having control over my own body and the
yeah,
fear of that and how
or
wrong.
having the ability. Yeah, I just looked at the scene where Ripley goes into this coffin like medical device and gets it cut out of her, but just her desperation to get it out, you know, because she knows this is fatal. This is a fatal, you know, the life of the mother is there is no option. It's like rabies. Once you
Mhm.
start showing symptoms,
Yeah,
you're
that's
you're
it.
you're you're done. But in this case, you can get
Mhm.
it out. Yeah, I had never seen that, but when you told me that, I just had to pause because all of the imagery went through my mind and it becomes obvious, right?
There's another thing that kicks in on an emotional level, which is also this like power dynamic, right? Because in all of the movies, you hear about the company. And it's, you know,
Right.
for most, it's, you don't even hear really the name. It's the Weyland-Yutani Company. But the company is after this alien because they want to use it as a bioweapon. They want to study it. They want to figure it out. And in, you know, when we're talking about these three movies, Alien, Aliens, and Aliens 3, in each one, the humans are expendable, right? Like in the first one, the crew is expendable. In Aliens, where you've got a group of Marines going back to ostensibly take out the alien, the unit is expendable. And then in Aliens 3, where you're on a penal colony, all of the prisoners are expendable, all in the name of profit and progress and all of that. So that's something else that I think resonates emotionally in these movies. You know, when you put that together with like the personal lack of autonomy and fear and what this and of being attacked, you know, that takes it from just running away from a scary creature.
Yeah. On that note, you know, I think that that's in our minds as humans, right? We will say the company or we'll name a country,
Yeah.
but there really are people that are
Mhm.
making the calls, right? So it's not
Sure.
that the company necessarily is evil. It's that you have to have leadership. The organization is going to reflect the
Mhm.
leadership,
Well,
and if your leadership is, you know, inhumane,
mhm.
your
Yeah.
company is going to be inhumane. One of the things that I did is I went and worked in the federal government, as you know, but the science section of the federal government. And you know, you hear this word bureaucrat, and I go in there and it's my, you know, fellow scientists, people whose papers I've been reading for, you know, 20 years, who are for them doing their patriotic service by going and working in there. And it just made me realize how, you know, it's happened to me over and over again in my life where I think you know, I have an image in my mind of something, but I haven't really actually experienced it myself. And then I go in there and I experience it and I find that, you know, it's completely redefined. Whatever that, you know, if you're adjacent to it or removed from it, going in there always completely redefines it in reality. So it allows me to know that when I'm talking about something, you know, I want to talk about something, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about because I haven't actually been in there. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm going to have a discussion about the
Mhm.
Pentagon, if I haven't worked in the Pentagon, I really don't have no idea what the hell is going on in the Pentagon.
Right.
But anyway, and I haven't worked in there.
Worked in a lot. You've got like 9 degrees. You've had 9,000 jobs. Like you've
A
done it all,
billion
my
jobs, right?
friend.
Hey, but listen, another big surprise, Tamara,
Yeah.
the acidic blood, the
Oof.
super powerful acidic blood.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a great plot piece as well because, you know, you see it, it's scary, you see it cutting through, you know, different parts of the spacecraft.
That gives
And
you like, okay, what I normally would do is punch it in the face and make it bleed. Don't want to do that.
nope. No, you really do not. You really, really, really do not. And that's something else they do too, like that happens across all three movies really well is that the tension is ratcheted up in a whole bunch of different ways. And sometimes it's about taking away the normal defense that you might have, right? So like in Aliens, there's a point where, you know, the Marines are going in and they are gunning for a fight. And then they realize that because of the part of the ship that they're in, they are not allowed to use their weapons.
Oh man. Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, so
Bummer.
like that tension. I mean, also I will say, like, one of the things that's kind of fun is at the end of each of these three movies in particular, there's always a countdown clock. And like they're not subtle about it. Like either they
Right.
got to get out of the ship in time or the planet's going to blow up
Right.
or, you know, the lead is going to come down. And so you've got your ticking clock, and you as the viewer are watching and your heart is racing with our characters. And that is a huge testament both to the direction, the editing, and the performances. So like we just have to call out Sigourney Weaver for just being a kick-ass, amazing, amazing lead who brings obviously toughness. You believe her in this role, but she also brings a lot of heart to it. You root for her. And, it's pretty usual, pretty normal for sci-fi and fantasy movies to be nominated for awards, especially Oscars in the craft categories, right? Because they're creating these new worlds, design, doing incredible things with sound and music. Way less common for someone to be nominated for a performance. And she was nominated for an Oscar in Aliens for
Yeah.
lead actress. And that is just a testament.
Rightfully so. Rightfully so. And the thing
Yeah.
to point out, I think, is in this era, people are more intentional about casting women in leading roles and these sort of things because we've come to realize, or at least those who make those choices be more include everyone, right? But here's the point: they weren't doing that then.
Oh, hell no. Hell no. No.
They weren't doing that then, and here she comes and just like,
Total
bam,
badass.
instant classic. Now, in terms of the entire like framing of it, company trying to get profit, humans are expendable. You have this heroic figure in Sigourney Weaver. There's a lot of things going on at one time.
Right.
I don't even know why I'm asking this because, history gives the answer. But I just want to know where you fall on this, on Aliens and the story. Does it hold up this world they created, this context they created? Because you have to motivate the two sequels, right? And somehow, and you can't tell the same story 3 times.
No, I think I would say for this chunk of the Aliens franchise, it does hold up specifically because of the way that they build it, right? Like you've got your boogeyman in the company. That's something that's consistent across all 3. You've got, it's funny, you asked before, like, who's the lead? Is it the alien or is it Sigourney Weaver or is it Ripley? Well, I guess another question of who's the real villain. Is it the alien who's just trying to survive, doing their thing, or is it the company? So I think that's one thing that's consistent. I think something else that is well done over the course of it is kind of the new pieces that we find out about this alien species in each of them, right? Like we have our introduction in Alien, then we get to the Queen, and then, beyond that, then we get to, it can actually host in other kinds of organisms, other species, and take that on. So we learn new things in each that add to our enjoyment. And then on top of that, like you talk about the chestbuster moment, which of course is like one of the most shocking moments, I think, in sci-fi history. But what it does is then in future movies is like, that at some point Ripley's going to get implanted. And even though like you as a person do not want that to happen, you as a fan, like you're just waiting for that. When is it going to happen? How is it going to happen? Does it happen because, she loses a fight? Does it happen because they're sneaky? Like, how does it go? Now, that said, there is one small bump there in Aliens 3 when it actually comes to that question. There's a little bit of a plot hole. So in Aliens, which is the second movie, we meet Newt, who is the small girl who has survived, and she and Ripley kind of, form this attachment to each other. And she comes back. She's one of the few survivors who comes back with Ripley. In fact, she's the only other human survivor. At the beginning of Aliens 3, we see that Ripley suspects Newt does not make it. So we see that, spoiler, sorry, we told you, we warned you. But we see, that Ripley suspects that Newt has been infected. It turns out she hasn't, right? But we have 2 infections, right? We have either the ox or the dog, whichever one you want. Personally, I kind of think it looks like a dragon, but that's another story. Could we do we didn't get into Alien Predator, but could we do like a Game of Thrones Alien mashup?
Right. Yeah.
I'd love to see
the White Walker dragon alien.
Dragon alien take on like the dragons from Game of Thrones. Anyway, I digress. But there are 2 implantations, right? There's the dog/ox implantation, which becomes our main alien creature. And then Ripley's been implanted. But as far as we know, the tree hugger, the face hugger, the face hugger can only do one implantation. So how did that happen? That doesn't quite make sense.
Oh, nice,
Right.
nice.
And there's also the
Yeah.
other thing we see is that there's an egg sac in the ship. But like, how did the egg sac, which is obviously where the face hugger came from, how did the egg sac get in there? Because
The company.
because in the first one we only see, or
Yeah.
sorry, in the second one, we
Yeah.
only see the alien outside. So there's a little bit of a hole there. Some people have
Yeah.
proposed that there's like a super face hugger, which has the capability of implanting more
Oh,
than one.
interesting. So you went through it. What is your final verdict? Does it fly?
My final verdict when it comes to does it fly story-wise? Hell yes.
Hell yes.
Hell yes. There is a reason this movie has spawned an entire universe, books, comics, video games. And I mean, for those who may not know too, there's going to be a series coming up on FX that Noah Hawley is doing. So there's going to be a series, and they've actually announced another movie that ostensibly will be taking place between Alien and Alien. So yeah.
Here's what I want. I want Marvel to get involved and let the aliens implant in Galactus, give Galactus a face hugger, give Thanos a face hugger, give Vision a face hugger. Let's see what happens. Even an Iron Man suit. What's his name? The War God or something? What is that? War Machine.
War Machine.
Implant War Machine.
Mm-hmm.
Like who? Implant Wolverine.
They're
already Wolverine enough, right?
Yeah,
they got that tail. Which brings us to the third segment.
Yeah.
How cool is this franchise?
I think it's pretty obvious that when we ask, does it fly for the vibes, both of us are going to say yes.
Oh yeah, this is one of the great ones. I mean, I think I can still remember how I felt when I watched it, right? That's the thing about it, is that I still remember being in shock, being afraid, and being in awe of this movie when I saw it those many years ago.
Well, and I think, something that I think also, like for me, like I don't like horror movies. I don't watch them. I dream about them. If I watch them, I wake up screaming at night. And let's be clear, like this is sci-fi, but it's horror. I mean, the second one is more action driven, still horror.
How do you soothe yourself when you watch horror?
Well, I don't watch it. I don't.
But you watch this one.
Okay, honestly, it's like me usually.
Are you a grabber?
No, I'm definitely a grabber.
Yeah.
If I'm at home, I'll like have a blanket and something I can kind of huddle under. I definitely do like this thing. If I'm watching it on a small screen, I'll like do that thing where you kind of like block out part of what you see.
Right.
So yeah, I'm pretty bad. And I mean, okay, so you know how with horror movies, there's always that one like silly scare where there's a lot of legitimate stuff, but then there's the window and like, the curtain is the cat. And there's one dumbass who screams in the theater. I'm the dumbass. I'm the dumbass. And as a previous musical theater major, I got some lungs, so you hear my scream.
But you know what? By the way, speaking of the aliens and acid, hydrofluoric acid, HF, you can't tell it apart from water. You could pour it on your hand, you wouldn't feel a thing. It consumes calcium. So when you're going into training, they show you all these horrible movies of the person who got it on them and didn't do the proper care. So what you're supposed to do is wash it with water for like, a long time, 10, 20 minutes. And then there's a cream that contains calcium that you put on it because it migrates to where the calcium is, right? So if you don't do that, you go home that night. In the middle of the night, you wake up because now the HF has consumed the calcium in your bones and you end up with mangled limbs, right? So the training they gave us, there's a guy who got a big HF spill on him, does everything right, but he puts his wallet back in his pocket, and the wallet had HF on it, so it basically dissolved half his pelvis, right? So this is what I'm thinking about when I'm looking at this alien. This is my real life experience with awful chemicals. And, the alien acid is even worse, right? It's going to go through several hulls of your spaceship and expose you to outer space.
See, this is why this is such an enduring movie, because no matter when you watch it, there is always something in it that you can pick out from your own personal experience to be afraid of.
To be exactly. To be afraid. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. From the vibes, from the feels, from the story, from the science, aliens is flies from the ground to the edge of the observable universe.
I love that. Yeah, I think we can say Alien flies, the Alien franchise flies across the board when it comes
Across
to
the
the
board.
question of, can you incubate an alien inside of a human?
Yes. It's called malaria.
Well, Hakeem, I have learned so much from you this episode, as I always do. This time it
Same.
was a little creepier than, usual, but that's okay. If you want to keep up and stay in the loop with the things that we are talking about, follow Does It Fly Pod on YouTube and TikTok. And we want to hear what you guys think. We want to hear what you think of the Alien franchise and the questions we've brought up. And of course, if you have ideas, then let us know what you'd like to do, what you'd like us to do an episode on. Please give us some love, hit subscribe, give us a rating, whether you're listening on Spotify, or say some nice things on a YouTube review, because that helps other people find the podcast as well.
Thank you. And join us next Friday.